So what I have here are introductions, and I just wanted to look at them really quickly, run through a few. So you guys will submit this to me at the end of the semester in early/mid December, and this so I try to pick a range of samples, right? That kind of topics, etc. to give you guys a feel for how to do this. Now, there's no set 100% perfect way, right? Some of you guys are doing more education type stuff. Some of you guys are doing more remote sensing type of stuff. And depending on your particular project, you might require more or less, say, sections. Just about everybody should probably have some sections. Again, not a requirement, but usually sections will help break up stuff. Everybody will have an abstract. But you guys should click through these examples this week and just see how the folks approach their introduction. So this one is a good one, but it's a bit short. Anytime you guys have a map inserted, and you guys may or may not have a map in your methods section, you may or may not have a map in your introduction. This is not your methods, right? This is the setting up of your problem. So this is the what's the issue, what's the background, what's the relevant context, so that you can, one, articulate your challenge, and two, make sure the reader, even if the reader isn't an expert in climate change, right, we're going to give them enough information that he or she can come along with you on this journey of exploration that you're taking us on in your study. And so, yeah. So there's an example of one.
You said that one was a little short. How long are they supposed
So there's no magical thing. Roughly 10 pages single spaced, something like that is a rule of thumb, but that's a very vague rule of thumb for you guys, right? It needs to be as long as it needs to be. When I say that, though, every year someone will turn into me a half page or a 1-page introduction and say, here it is, I covered all the important stuff. So this is doing a couple things, right? This is your main, this is the majority of your grade this semester comes from this, right? You've been submitting annotated bibliographies to me. You've been collecting preliminary data. You've been this and that, right? So there's two things here. In the context of a senior thesis, so a lot of times and I'll show you some of my introductions in a second for some of my papers, but almost always in journals, we're constrained, right? We can't write a 50-page paper in a journal. There are a few journals where they allow you to do that, but generally speaking, we don't do that, right? We got to be tight, got to be boom, hit the important parts, go on. The one example when that's not the case is if you're doing a review paper where you're looking at all the issues surrounding some aspect of a particular phenomenon. In that case, you usually do have a fairly long introduction because you're trying to set the stage. But the point is, you're not just telling me about the specific. Of course, the focus is getting us up to speed about this specific challenge. It's also a chance for you to demonstrate to me your scholarship. So to be clear, scholarly. So what do you guys? When I say scholarly, what do you guys think of? But what does that mean? But what is so when I say scholarly, Aspen thinks of journals, but what type of journals?
Peer review.
Okay, so Aspen scholarly thinks peer review. Okay, what else?
Scientific writing.
Technical writing. Okay. Okay, what else? So scholarly. So those comments aren't wrong, but a better definition, scholarly means understands a bunch of crud, right? A more global understanding. So we can have an awesome, let's say, fish biologist, right? That really knows, I don't know, kelp bass. Knows kelp bass a lot, knows about their guts, knows about their reproductive structure, knows about, that kind of stuff. And that's great. But that person may not be a scholarly ichthyologist. They might know a lot about their little area, but they don't maybe know about other ceranids around Hawaii. Or maybe they don't know about wrasses. Or maybe they don't know about freshwater fish, or stuff like that. So scholarly implies that you have a broad understanding of whatever the issue of the discipline at hand is. So you guys associate scholarly with these journals and this writing because a lot of the folks that do that that's where the term scholars comes from, right? Scholars isn't just an expert. A scholar is, in the traditional sense, an expert, but also someone that has a very good grounding in whatever, computer science, physics, whatever the case may be. So in the abstract, I'd say the most common shortcoming you guys have, other than grammar and spelling and stuff like that, the most common shortcoming is you guys find a paper. What's this one on? This is a Springs Fire. What's this on? Oh, okay. This is on our endangered Dudley restoration project. So, Now this is one that's a little bit hard in the sense that we don't have a massive amount of scholarship on this particular plant. Okay, there has been some. Other projects you guys might have right now might have, easy if you just went to the database and just typed in, say, your species name or typed in your phenomenon, you might get hundreds or thousands of, journal articles that are directly related pop up, right? That's not the case with this particular project. And so what tends to happen is you guys find an article on, plants, a book, let's say, on the plants of the Santa Monica Mountains, and you cite that continuously. That's the signal that you guys are not very scholarly. It signals to me that it's not wrong. It's not that I'm saying that reference doesn't specifically argue for that. But what it says is you don't really understand the literature on this subject. Because if you did, you would have cited, Smith's paper on the first sentence and Johnson's paper on the next one and Rodriguez's on the next one, right? And that kind of thing. Because I totally understand this. And again, this is just like page length. There isn't any magic number here. But the point is, the more scholarly you can make your project, and that's not to say that you want to insert a different thing every single sentence just for the sake of doing it, right? But you want to communicate to me, since you don't have a page restriction here, that you're both going to set up your main project and that you understand the basic background of this subject. Hayden.
So you don't want us to just cite one source 10 times. You'd rather have
right.
5 sites.
Yes, you are correct.
2 times, or...
You're correct. Yeah. So citing one source 10 times generally is a signal to me that you haven't done as much research as you could have. Again, depending on the subject, maybe there is only this one source. But in my experience, that's not the case with you guys. It's just that you're naive researchers, and you guys are young. It's totally understandable. But you find something like, I could use this for this and this and this and this and this and this. Check. Don't need to find anything else. And that's not a scholarly approach, right? Because everybody will have something. Every publication, every source will contribute something different to our conversation, right? Even if it's the same facts, they might be interpreted slightly differently. So it's important for you guys to pull that stuff together and look at that. So here's an example of this one, the Dudley one. So you guys can look that guy over. Here's another one. Oh, this guy for some reason has the notes. Sorry about that. Maybe I'll resave this so you don't have this stuff getting in your way. So I wanted to show you guys this one because in this case, this person is talking about here's the deal, blah blah blah. Here's my site. In this case, this was a project where the student was looking at seeing if he could relocate organisms that may or may not have been extirpated, that people think maybe have gone extinct from the Santa Monicas, but people haven't really looked maybe for it. And so his project was to go back and specifically look in particular ways, in particular places for these things, with the idea being that if they were at least vaguely common, he would have a good chance of detecting them. So that was his project. So he started out talking about the background of his area, in this case the Santa Monica Mountains. So that was key to this particular question. This particular question was, these critters were extirpated from this place. So let's start talking about this place. We talked about the place for a little bit. Has a map. So here's a great example. This is not his sampling map. This is not the map that he put in his methodology, but it is a map that's relevant in his introduction. So in this case, maybe you guys do want to have a map in your method section. And I should say, if you guys have a map, all your maps need to be professional and complete. So you guys have all had GIS by now, intro to GIS at least. And so you guys know about having a scale bar. You guys know about having clear legends. You guys know about all that kind of stuff. Now, you might not have practiced it for a while, but any map you put, Google Map, fail. Do not insert a Google Map, right? You guys are much too sophisticated to do that. Another thing is, both your method maps and any kind of like contextual maps like this, work on those now, right? We still have another month and a half or so before this thing is due. Start working on those now. You might tweak them, you might adjust them before you submit it, or you might adjust it or tweak it before you submit it, our final version at the end of spring. But these are things that you can do right now, right? You can do it while you're hanging out. You can do it while listening to music. It's one of those things that is not necessarily complex, but in my experience, takes some time for you guys to actually be on the computer and get it done. And one of the things, again, just as years of experience, one of the things that gets left to the end. And one of the things that I look and I'll see a Google map inserted in some, like, what's this? I ran out of time, and the computer burped, and then there's a fire, and then, no, right? Take care of it now, because at this point, you guys know what you're doing, right? You know, if this is a background figure, you know the geographical range that you want your background figure to be, right? So get on those guys sooner rather than later. And then it could be maybe the map is or the figure or something is some historical thing. So maybe it's like a map from the Ranchero period or something like that. That's cool too. I'm not saying that if there's a reason to include a pre-existing map, that's fine. Obviously, properly referenced and cited. But with the exception of that, you guys are going to want to generate your own map. So then he goes on, talks for a while. Then he changes gears, totally new section, and talks about historic or longitudinal explorations of vertebrates. And so in this case, he's talking about this guy that ran the Museum of Vertebrate Zoology up at UC Berkeley. So he talks a little bit about this and this famous case. And then his resurvey project, and again, now this is not his map, or even in this case his area, but because it illustrates the kind of work, and he felt it was providing him some guidance or some important examples of what was learned, that whatever, went through and did all this kind of stuff. And then blah 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 blah. Okay. Another example is Ted's, and so in this case, so let's have a look. So example, what I was telling you about before. So let's see. Here's one page. The first page, one reference, different reference, third reference, fourth reference, fifth reference, sixth reference, seventh. Is that a seventh? Yeah, seventh, eighth. 9th, 10th, 11th. So just on these two paragraphs, 11 things, right? So again, there isn't a magic number, but so imagine how this would read if instead it had DuPont 2013, DuPont 2013, DuPont 2013, DuPont 2013, DuPont 2013, DuPont 2013, DuPont 2012, DuPont 2013, DuPont 2013. Like that's a common thing that I see from you guys. So just acknowledge that, realize that, and as a placeholder, go ahead and throw those references in there. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to reference that study if it gave insight to here, but you wouldn't want to just reference that single thing over and over again. Okay, so then so that's that. We can also look at some examples of mine, which you can make fun of. You all have permission to make fun of all my stuff. Let's see, what should we look at? How about this one? Okay, so this was a report. So this is much more akin to what you guys did. So this is what I did on my part of my sabbatical a couple years ago. So I went to this place in Turkey that was going to be destroyed by this government dam, and I essentially said what was going to be destroyed, and I counted a bunch of trees and talked to a bunch of people that were going to be displaced. So in this case, if you look at this guy, so in that case I had what's called an executive summary. You guys do not have to have that. You could if you wanted. An executive summary is sort of a abstract on steroids. So executive summary is like an abstract. It serves the same role as an abstract. It summarizes the content of the paper. But as the name implies, it's directed at executives who supposedly are just so busy they can't possibly read anything. And so the idea there is it not only summarizes the key points, but it has all the important points. So a lot of times you'll see executive summaries with bullet points as well. So not just I surveyed and found that there were, 20,000 trees, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point kind of thing. So it would be acceptable for you guys to do an executive summary depending on what project you're doing. And in particular, some of your partners might request more of that type style. So that's okay too. But if you have a look at this one, this starts with the scope and laying some groundwork. Then it starts with the goals of the study, and then it gets into this particular site. And if you note, there are really no references here, right? Here's a paragraph. There's no references. Here's another paragraph. I think I haven't looked at this in a while. Here's another section. Paragraph, no references. Paragraph, one reference. Paragraph, no reference. Paragraph, no. Is that right? No reference? Yeah, or some pers com. So that's a reference, but and on and on. In this case, this is because nobody's ever written about any of this part of the world, or about this particular river and about the things I'm talking about. So there really wasn't much to cite. Okay, so again, these are guidelines, and there's exceptions to all these rules, and there's justifications. But from what I've seen over the years, I think you guys are better served to have a lot of references, and then we can go from there. But start from that default mode. Let's look at another one. That's another example of introduction. Okay, so here's one looking at our seafood stuff. So here's the introduction, and it's short, right? So the introduction goes 1, 2, 3. 3 continues on 4, 5, 6, 7 paragraphs, and it hits right. So this would be again more of a journal. This isn't more of a journal. This is a journal format, right? So we're not allowed to just go on for pages and pages and pages. Let's see. What's another example of one? How about oil spill chapter? Maybe the oil spill chapter. Okay, so this would be this is a chapter that was summarizing what happened historically. So this wasn't an experimental thing like you guys would do, but so it sort of starts right here. One paragraph. There's let's see, one. No, that's not a reference. That's a reference. One reference. Then we're into this guy. Here's a reference. 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 Okay, so you guys get the idea, right? Make sense? All right, cool. So you guys can go ahead and take a look at those examples I sent you. And the other thing I would suggest is sometimes you guys don't really, or your default is to not have that many subheadings or subsections. And generally, the more subsections are more helpful for you guys. So, background, a site description, stuff of that nature. Usually, I find really helps you guys organize your thoughts in your introduction. So you can talk about the concept, big concepts, etc. And again, recall that the goal of our introduction is to go from the very broad to the specifics of your study. So it's okay to start broad. I don't know. Pollution is a major challenge for the planet in the 21st century, right? Something like that, and then rapidly go to narrow down about your specific project or your specific goals. Make sense? All right, cool. So, in our next little bit here, I want to break off into groups of 3 folks again. Not the same group of people you were before. So this time I want somebody from this table mixed with somebody from this table, mixed with somebody from that table. So you guys have to actually stand up, as horrible as that sounds, and move around. And so we're going to reform. And I'll tell you what you can do once you reform. And make sure you introduce yourselves to your new group people.